so that it can be shared with others. All right, welcome Lucy and welcome Camille.
Thank you. I'm glad that everybody's here today and ready to hear a little bit about a wonderful experience that we've been able to have with college, career, and transition clubs in Putnam County. I am actually a retired special educator. I have done 22 years in Putnam County, and I taught 3 years special ed out of state in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Just for a little bit of background, I've done everything from pre-K up to age 21. And I'm going to let Lucy just tell you her experience before we jump into the start of our CCT club.
I started in ESE in 1984, which seems like a million years ago. I have been Camille's helper with this experience journey with our kids, and we've had a blast. That all of our students really, really enjoy their experiences with this club. So I'm the helper, I'm the Egg McMahon to her Johnny Carson.
Okay, thanks, Lucy. I want to start right from the beginning, and that was grant writing. An email came across my desk that talked about money from UCF to start a club for students and their post-school outcome. And as a high school special ed teacher, it caught my eye right away. And all I thought was, they want to give us money? Well, I'm on board with that. So without paying attention to a lot of detail, I quickly wrote my grant, I submitted it, and many of you are probably familiar with the name of Dr. Drew Andrews. He was an absolute godsend. He reached out to me right away after I submitted this grant and said, Camille, I like what you wrote. Let's see if we can tweak this. And basically what he meant to say, reading between the lines, was, you really messed up, but I think it's something we can salvage. I kid you not, he was just the most gracious individual to help me really grasp what the grant money was for. And it did tie in with what my vision was. I just had to combine the two concepts. So the grant was written, and that year, 2018, I was one of two in the state of Florida that was given $6,000. And then the second half of the year, another $6,000. Talk about excitement. I let the students know right away the gift we'd been given and how it would help them in their future career, in career planning, in community experiences, college tours, etc. So let me back up and tell you a little bit about our school. I am retired from the school, but E.H. Miller School in Putnam County is a center school, all special ed, age 3 to 21. So what that meant was, for the College Career and Transition Grant, I needed to collaborate with mentors from a regular ed classroom setting. And our previous principal had gone to a school about 25 miles away. And I reached out to her and I said, could we come on your campus once a month? I'm looking for some regular ed mentors for our population, and we want to talk career. I want to connect up your kids that are planning futures and a little bit more able to share the reality of what that involves with the College and Career Transition Club. She was excited and on board and just went out of her way to find a classroom for us to meet, a teacher on that campus, and we held our first meeting. Kids will come when you offer food. That's a given. Adults will come.
Yes.
When you offer
I'm here
food.
for food right now.
So they put out on campus that if you're interested in a peer mentoring program in a club called College, Career, and Transition, show up. There were 44 people from the QI Roberts campus that were going to consider mentoring the E.H. Miller students. And I was beyond thrilled. We did a icebreaker. Those are important. It gets people up and moving and talking and out of their chair, and it just kind of relaxes everybody. And let me tell you a really fun one. It's called This or That. And any of you in the classroom might have used it. I would have people stand up. If you're a Jaguar fan, over on the right side of the room. And if you're Miami Dolphin, on the left side of the room. And then they trash talk the team they didn't like. And you would just kind of see people light up when they saw somebody else that liked their team. I would always ask them questions about pop music and who they liked. That got them talking, and they kind of saw who else was interested in that. Junk food was another one. Oh, I'm all about Snickers. No, it's Skittles. And so an icebreaker, really important. And in that process, it kind of naturally developed who was gravitating toward the students from E.H. Miller. It wasn't adults stepping in and saying, you need to mentor this person, you need to be with that one. And I think that's another critical element. The students took ownership. Well, let me tell you what happened on the second meeting. And even in each of these meetings, we were paying out of CCT grant money transportation for a bus. You pay the bus driver, and it would be upwards of $600 sometimes. So that was just snarfing away at our funds, when I quickly realized toward the end of that first school year that we could incorporate community-based instruction, because that's really what it fell under. We were taking trips into the community, whether it was going to QI and building the mentor relationships or touring somewhere. So that fixed our budget issue quickly. The students that joined us knew that they weren't going to have to pay. I was okay with that the first year. And then in the second year, I'll tell you how that changed just a little bit. So we're going to go right into the next meeting. We ended up with the 44 students that came, 8 were committed. So that was a shock. However, you can do a lot with 8 people that are fully on board and committed. So it didn't bother me. Of course, I wanted to have one-on-one. We had 16 students the first year from E.H. Miller. We had 8 regular ed from QI, and we had 9 ESE students from Palatka High School. So our bus would drive over to Palatka High School and pick up their students, and we'd head out to QI. I wanted the one-on-one. It just didn't happen until year 2. If somebody has a question about something, don't hesitate to ask or throw something in the chat box, because I can just ramble on here, and I know that. Lucy's going to be quiet unless I nudge her. Okay, I'm going to go into our second meeting. Our shirts arrived, and I'm going to scroll down. See the very cool CCT, College Career and Transition Club. Every member in the club got a shirt. Theirs was a t-shirt, and leadership had the golf shirts, but the kids felt really excited and proud about being a part of something, and like a sports uniform, it bonds you. We looked really cool going out in public in a sea of purple, and having a shirt and the grant money paid for that was a really nice addition to the startup of our club. We went to St. John's River State College for our first college tour. That's in Putnam County. I actually got my AA degree from St. John's. You did too?
I did too.
Yeah.
I did
So
too.
we
Love
went,
the school.
it is. It's wonderful. And it's right there, close by for all the kids. We're in a very low socioeconomic county, and that kind of location appeals to a lot of people, to a lot of families on tight budgets. It's a wonderful school as well. So we toured St. John's State College, and it was a student-led tour that ended up in the library, and the kids saw all the resources available to them, and they had a wonderful experience. They loved seeing the Viking Center where there were pool tables and kids could just hang out in between classes. And it ended with a trip to Golden Corral, which food, again, a big hit. And we had a glitch with the buses that day. The students that were supposed to come in from QI Roberts, again, about 25 miles, their bus never showed up. So people on that end scrambled, got a bus. They ended up showing up just in time for a Golden Corral, which that's okay. It still gave the peer contact time, hangout time, some good camaraderie. And any student in Putnam County loves to go to Golden Corral and heap up their plate with those
That's right.
desserts.
Gummy bears.
Yeah, so there's our second meeting. And I'll back up again and just mention that at the very first CCT meeting, after the initial, we fed them with Subway sandwiches, they each got an index card and they listed like the 3 top locations they'd like to tour, the schools they'd like to tour, the programs they were interested in. And that proved to be very helpful for planning some of our future meetings. And I highly recommended that because you want to draw them in with their interests and where they want to head out in life. The mentoring really did benefit the E.H. Miller kids in that the kids from QI Roberts saw that we weren't all that different, and our kids saw, hey, there's a whole new world out there. There's a group of people I'm going to meet when I finish this school that it's going to be a delightful experience. And I was really happy to see that.
And because we're at a center school,
Yeah.
they don't have those same experiences. Our center school is wonderful, but at the same time, it's somewhat insulating. So it was good for them to get out and see all the different schools. This happens to be a Cambridge school that we started with. Just, different walks of life. It's neat, the experience and the exposure.
Mm-hmm. And because of the Cambridge program, it did have a conflict a couple times where they had testing going on and they weren't able to be a part of a couple meetings during the school year, but still the ones that they were a part of, those eight kids were just totally engaged and involved. So we'll move right to our next meeting, and they went to Flagler College in St. Augustine, which was
Beautiful.
So much fun. It's such a beautiful campus. Again, it was student-led, and we were emphasizing not just going to Flagler College, but career opportunities on that college campus in that community. The kids had a wonderful time. I can't say enough good about the college campus tours. And now with Zoom, you're still able to do a virtual tour. Obviously not quite as fun, but we know things are going to get back to somewhat to normal. There'll be more trips to be taken and fun things to do. The more kids are exposed to anything out in the community, job-wise, schools, etc., the broader that knowledge base is for them for future decisions. So that's a big goal for our College Career and Transition Club. And when we finished the November meeting at Flagler, there was a Christmas party, lots of fun, just goofing off. But vocational rehab locally with our sheltered workshop hosted a Java-palooza, and it was an amazing day. And the students traveled together with us to Palatka High School, where they hosted the Java-palooza. And the mentors would go to work setups, and they were timed, and then awards were given out at the end for, there was a banking situation where they tried, there was fencing, there was wrapping silverware if you were in a restaurant, hanging clothes if you worked in retail, and all the different job skills that there was probably 30. So they had to pick their top 5 because they couldn't make it to all of them. And when awards were given out later that morning, many from E.H. Miller School were given medals because they had the best time, the best record, and the pride and the joy that you saw on everybody's face.
There's a big impact from that.
Huge.
And there were a lot of schools there. It wasn't just ours.
Right.
It wasn't, they weren't just competing against each other. There were several schools there, And that made them even more prideful because they knew that they were able to really accomplish something compared to other people.
Yes.
They just were so happy about that.
And the Palatka Athletic League was there and had one job scenario set up. And as a result of that, one of our students from the emotionally disturbed unit was offered a job with the Palatka Athletic League. It was a summer position, and I thought, this is what it's all about.
Right.
Publix was there. Publix at the time had, I think it was 3 or 4 of students from my classroom that went with our our transition specialist in the district. 3 of them were hired full-time and still work there. I was overjoyed just seeing how that all connected, that all came together. And kids showed up after the Jabapalooza with their medals that next day, and their names were called out over the intercom. And it was just totally a win-win.
Mm-hmm.
So much fun, very well staffed. And then the kids that came to mentor were each given a $10 gift card for mentoring and stuff. So that was a nice little pat on the back. And consequently, instead of our 8 from QI, there was a huge change in that the second year, but I'll get to that in a minute. When you have a college career and transition club, you want to have a plan, you want to have an agenda, you want to have your meetings mapped out, but you've got to overplan. There was a no-show speaker, and this was a friend of mine that was a merchant marine, retired guy that was just so interesting. And I sent him several reminders. I sent him something in the mail to remind him, but he got the date mixed up. So I stepped in and I had a career inventory, passed that out to everybody, and the mentors with our kids filled out this career interest inventory together, and it went beautifully. So lesson learned, just like in a lot of classroom scenarios, plan and overplan. So it didn't backfire. We had a fun day that day as well. In February, we went to Job Source in Putnam County. The QI students, all 8, were pretty much set on 4-year colleges, et cetera. They opted not to join us that trip. But our Palatka High students and the E.H. Miller students had a wonderful time. They didn't realize that there were computers there. The internet was available for them to do some job searching, job training. Things are held at Career Source, and it was a wonderful experience for them. They went to lunch afterwards. They had, I think, one of the more personable tours because it was a small group and everybody really received a lot of individual attention on that one. So it's a small little office, but don't discount that. You know, the things that are right there nearby are resources you want to draw into. February, after Job Source, we had a news anchor from ABC News, Jessica Clark from Jacksonville, showed up to address the students for career planning, and it was phenomenal. She started the meeting and said she wanted everybody to shut their eyes. So you're looking out at this classroom of kids and they shut their eyes. And she said, now I want you to dream the biggest dream you could ever imagine as far as where you're going to go in life. She just let them think a while. And then she had them open their eyes and she said, now hang on to that dream. And what we're going to talk about today is dream big, but start small. So as a news anchor, Jessica talked about employment she had during high school, during college, at smaller TV stations, and then ending up in Jacksonville. So personable, so much fun, great contact with each of the students. And I remember one thing she shared was that she personally didn't use straws. And she kind of challenged the kids, you know, what if you could just decide not to use plastic straws anymore and just kind of help our environment? Well, one of my students caught hold of that And in school the next day, he told me, he goes, I'm not going to have straws anymore. I said, well, let's call Jessica and let's tell her that. So we got Jessica on the phone, and Aaron came up to the phone and said, Miss Jessica, I'm not going to use straws anymore. And Jessica just lit up and just praised him and went on and on. And, it's little things like that where they see somebody on TV every night on the local news, and then that person's now a friend of theirs. Little things like that really matter. It was fun. It really stood out. Jessica was a speaker for us year 2 as well. In March, remember me talking about Drew Andrews? Such a kind man. He was our speaker. He showed up and he had a discussion with the kids on soft job skills. And he went from table to table, working with each group, having the mentors help our students fill out some questions related to soft job skills, and was so engaging, so very pleasant. And he has some roots with Putnam County, so he was really quite happy to get asked to come. Anybody that's thinking of a CCT club, I would put him number 1 on your list to contact, reach out to, because he really is on board with wanting to come and inspire young people that are a part of a college career and transition club. He did a fabulous job and came back in year 2 for us. In April, we went to Santa Fe Community College. They have a program, several actually, for special needs students. But we were looking at it more from the aspect of the planetarium, jobs on campus, and a tour of the Santa Fe Zoo. It went beautifully. And we intended to get back to discuss more of their educational programs, and that didn't happen. But again, it was a student-led tour. Everyone had a wonderful time. There's a moon rock at the planetarium, and the kids just were in awe. They were able to touch the rock, try to hold it up, pick it up. It was mammoth. Of course, they couldn't, but a wonderful experience. There's a lovely picnic area. So we had Subway sandwiches delivered at the end of that tour. And one young lady who was hired by Publix, she still is in contact with me and working toward applying for a program there with early childhood. She did do some job shadowing in a preschool program. She'd be really good in that scenario. So, who knows, maybe as things come to a close for her at Publix, she'll get that application finished and apply for that. And again, if just one student ended up at Santa Fe, how wonderful is that? I would also put that on your list of tour locations. They do an amazing job. We splurged that trip. We went with a tour bus. And when that big red bus pulled up, everybody's jaw dropped and they're like, I want to go on that trip. And you kind of had to earn the privilege to be a part of college career and transition. Well, actually, it's for 9th grade and up. But everybody on that campus saw what those kids got to do and where they were going that day. And again, that was wonderful for everybody to see. We got back a little bit after school hours, so I had parent permission slips for everybody to get picked up. And because we're a center school, because we're spread out through the entire county, everything was during the school day. So that was a win-win. Others might opt for after school hours. That just wasn't a possibility for us. But I do know that kids that met mentors did reach out after school hours. And there were some friendships that developed that were really wholesome and wonderful for each kid. We had a party at the end of the year, and that kind of took us through the end of our first year. Does anybody have any questions or comments about year 1 with us? And our moderator would let us know. So, all right, we're going to.
I don't see any questions, but I had a question. This is Donna Phillips, and I was just wondering, when you said that you started off with 44 students, and then you ended up not having enough to go one-on-one in your mentoring. So did you just assign more students to each mentor, and how did that work?
Okay, it wasn't a situation of assigning at all, ever. They just naturally, they would sit in a table facing 4 people. And whatever hands-on activity there was, the people at that table would just help whoever was there. Or one key student of those 8, there was a lady that just really stood out in charge. She would kind of go from table to table and kind of make sure everybody was helping each other. And when you think about the 44 that show up and then understand what the concept of the club is, it isn't for everybody. Just like special ed isn't for everybody. But like I said, those 8 that got on board with us, it was 100% what they wanted to be doing. So it worked out great.
Thank you.
And Carol is asking, was there any type of application to become a part of this club?
For the very first year, no application was required. However, at the end of the first year, I had students write an essay on why they should be selected to go to the Orlando 2-day conference on our end of the year wrap up and network with other CCT clubs and other organizations that are out there. And when we did that essay application, 3 stood out. And so I took, just taking my own personal vehicle, 3 ladies, and we went to Orlando. The application wasn't required because the stipulation is 9th grade and above. And I wanted as many people on board that wanted to be a part of ours. So good question though. The second year, I started to mix things up a little bit without an application to be a part of things, but I threw out to them the idea of dues for the club. Because once you're going through your grant money, you want to start having ideas to bring in funds to allow the club to continue. And if we weren't at a center school, my classroom ran a coffee business. So if the mentors were on the same campus, we could have used the coffee money and generated more and built and expanded that to maybe some baked goods and such, and kept money coming in for the club. But we were looking at setting up some dues, then buying your own t-shirt the next time around, and mixing it up a little bit so that there was an investment from the kids' part to really want to be a part of that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Carol also asked that, did you screen the students with extreme behaviors?
That was up to their teacher. So we had kids from the emotionally disturbed unit, and their teacher handpicked who was going to go. And ironically, he came along a few times to supervise, and his kids were exemplary off campus. They didn't want to show up at Palatka High School or QI Roberts and look like an idiot and look like
They didn't want to stand out.
yeah. So they
wanted to blend, and they wanted to look like they belonged at Palatka High School.
Yeah.
She also asked, was elopement ever a problem?
Not once. I brought along a male paraprofessional who had a wonderful rapport with every kid. And in the back of my mind, I thought, well, I might need him for crowd control or elopement, whatever. Just didn't ever come up. They were just so well-behaved, well-mannered, and had such a wonderful time. And again, even the EBD population really appreciated getting off campus. And I had one gentleman, and it was at the end of that first year when Dr. Andrews was speaking, he went and gave his business card to everybody. So they had contact at UCF with all of his information. And one gentleman ripped up his business card. So I just kind of discreetly went over to the table he was sitting at, and I brushed the ripped up business card in my hand and let that go. But when we got back on campus, I let him know that that was an extremely disrespectful thing, and that it cost him going on our next trip. And of course, he wanted to engage me in conversation as to why it wasn't. And I said, well, we're done. And I turned and walked away. And it cost him one trip off campus, but then he earned his way to get back in with the group. But that's minor, when you think about what could go wrong with high school kids, and especially this high school kid. So I was glad he got to come right back with us, and he appreciated getting to come back. I'm going to go into year 2. How are we doing on time, Lucy?
It's 1:15.
Oh, okay, we're good. I might go a little faster through year 2. Okay, with 8 kids at QI Roberts, I was reflecting and thinking, how can we get a larger population of mentors? Well, friends of mine at Palatka High School that were both in special ed and regular ed settings were interested in what we were doing, because we did a lot of communication with them, and I decided to go ahead and move it to the Palatka High School campus. So we had that year 26 E.H. Miller students, so that grew. 55 Palatka High School students, and those were with commitment, not ones that were going to show up for a Subway sandwich and then gone. 55. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. And then 7 from the ESE population at Palatka High. So that took the number to 88. Now, did 88 make it to every meeting? No, but the norm was 36 or higher for attendance. And I did take attendance every week, every month and such. So how wonderful was that? At our very first meeting, a vision board was created. And the vision board had a lot of reading on it. So these regular ed kids were right there with our kids, helping design this beautiful artwork and talking about career goals. And again, that was something to measure outcomes with as well. And it was such a fun art activity with markers. And we had 2 big classrooms we were able to spread out, and Lucy would be in one classroom, I'd be in the other. We had Mr. Black with us, and then the contact person, one of the 2 at Palatka High, was someone in charge of jobs for Florida grads, and that was another grant. So she was helping kids that were high risk to possibly not graduate make sure they graduated. And they were extremely focused and excited about helping our kids. It was her enthusiasm. And I can't say enough about who your sponsors are. You want someone that genuinely cares about their kids. And I have to brag on Lucy for a minute. She spotlighted a student in her class that she knew would be wonderful working in a vet office. She worked with and worked with the transition specialist, and that student worked, job shadowed in a veterinarian office. How wonderful is that? It was her enthusiasm. And the parents were on board as well.
Oh yeah, really, really super proactive mother, and the veterinarian fell in love with him, and he got to see a surgery. He was in charge with helping the dogs come out of anesthesia, along with, the people who were actually in charge. And it impacted him so greatly that now he is absolutely 100% sure that that's his career track. And they're very supportive. Of course, with COVID, that has separated him from the business for now, but he will be returning, and he has a future there.
Mm-hmm. And these are the stories that, again, if it's just a handful that get placed in employment, how wonderful is that? And then the ripple effect when other kids hear about it. Mm-hmm. And it's a win-win for everybody. It really is. Okay, so our numbers jumped by changing our venue closer to travel to Palatka High School. And we did a September meet and greet with a career interest inventory. And what we saw with the vision board and all of that, kids just naturally gravitated to other kids. One of my guys saw a kid wearing a Dallas Cowboy shirt, and he's a fanatic for the Cowboys. And, that hooked those two up right away. And what we ended up doing was 2 or 3 kids would mentor one of our ESE population because we had such wonderful resources there. It was just delightful to see.
A lot of laughter and friendship.
Yeah, camaraderie was huge
Mhm.
that second year. I just couldn't have been more thrilled. And it wasn't about the food. It wasn't about what I can get. It just was evolving into something really, really wonderful. So our highlights for year 2, we had a tour of a cosmetology program and barber school. The students that went were 3 of them were given a haircut. That was fun. Even the paraprofessional that went with me, he got a haircut. Kids all laughed about that. And a girl with us was so sure she was going to be in the program and learn to do nails and facials and stuff. And she was a Palatka High student, so she was too young to apply, but I could very easily see her doing that because she was all about the glam. And again, if just one girl could see how close, that was in Orange Park. So we traveled about 35, 40 minutes for that tour. Finished with lunch off campus, a lot of fun before we had to go back. And then it was year 2 of Java-Palooza. Java-Palooza went just as wonderful that year. Kids were given lunch afterwards. Some medals were given out again to a lot of the E.H. Miller students, which just made them feel so good about themselves. In January, a youth leader from the community came to speak. So this was someone who shops at Publix. He would spot the kids in the auditorium classroom that we were in and compliment them on their job skills at Publix. And this guy, because he works with youth, he could identify that kid in the top row that was so disinterested and draw them in and find out what they wanted to do, where they wanted to be in life, and just had such a wonderful rapport that day. And, one of the guys was saying, this was Lucy's student, that he wanted to clean, that he liked janitorial stuff. So this youth leader was bragging on him about what an honorable career that is. We need somebody in every walk of life. So youth leaders, I had a retired teacher show up to speak that year who did a fabulous job with her teaching background. She just kind of, again, talked about the stages of how she ended up being an educator. She was a stewardess before she went into teaching. So stories like that were just really fun for the kids to hear. After the youth leader, in the month of February, we had Drew come back, and he brought with him his enthusiasm again. It was a much larger crowd, so a lot of kids hadn't met him. Just connected so wonderfully with everybody. Again, I would just put a star by his name. Dr. Drew Andrews is fabulous. I don't think he's listening right now, but he was in the session at the keynote speaker this morning. So if you're listening, hi, Drew, we love and miss you, or I do. And that brought us up to March, where Jessica Clark came back for a second time. And none of the students, for some reason, I forgot what the conflict was, maybe another tour they had going, but just Palatka High School ESE and E.H. Miller kids were there, and Jessica did mock job interviews. So some of my kids in my classroom knew they were going to get selected, and they came dressed really nicely that day, and they went up front, and Jessica interviewed them and coached them on how to answer some of the questions, and did a fabulous, fabulous job. And then she came back to my classroom where we had a little time with refreshments and snacks and just talking and getting to know her more. And that brought us to COVID. So this third year has been, I did a Zoom meeting at the start of this year, and then there's been other Zoom meetings, but we're hoping we can get back to taking off and touring again. So that's kind of the birth and rebirth of year 1 and 2 of a CCT. Any questions from anybody? because I think we did pretty good taking you to the time slot. And I know, I'll just reiterate, you got to pick that sponsor that's really motivated. Oh, money for the sponsor. I did some networking and found out that there was one individual that went ahead and took $1,000 stipend. I went much less because I wanted the money to go to the kids, but I took a $200 stipend at the start of the year and at the end of the year because it was a lot of legwork. And then one sponsor that I started to work with out of Pensacola before their school was destroyed in the hurricane, she didn't take any stipend at all. So it's up to you on how the money is spent, but you're accountable for an end of the year financial report. And that's kind of the variation. You're going to see someone with 1,000, somebody with no stipend taken. But anybody interested, it will be a blast with setting up a college career and transition club and watching kids blossom. Are we done?
Thank you so much, Lucy and Camille, for sharing about the College and Career Transition Club. Please, if there aren't any other questions, please remember to do the evaluation at the end for the session. And if you have questions about the CCT Club applications, those can be found on the FCSUA website, which is fcsua.org. And we also have a booth that has information in there too. So thank you everyone for attending today. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Camille.
Thank you.
Have fun. Bye.
Bye.